Well, hello again. As we continue our journey with Jesus today, we come to an event in the Savior's life that is one of just a very few of the stories of the Bible recorded in all four of the Gospel accounts. Each one of the Gospel authors, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, tells the story, now in slightly different ways, and so I encourage you to read it from all four Gospels. And as you are able then to piece it together by assembling the various details and specifics that each author includes, you can be more familiar with the entire story and the cast that was involved. Now, this is a story about one of the most popular miracles that Jesus ever did. Many of us have known this story since we were very, very young. But why is this story so popular? Why is it so loved? Well, I think it's loved and popular because it portrays the kindness and compassion of Jesus in a relatable and undeniable way. And I'd like to also suggest that we love this story and we find it very popular and we hold it very dear because it's about food. And we love food and we enjoy eating. And so this story instantly came and remains one of our favorite Bible stories. And laugh with me with my humor. Now, please do not understand my use of the word story. This is not a made-up thing. It really happened. My faith assures me that it really did happen and that over 5,000 people were miraculously fed by the donation of a small boy's picnic lunch consisting of just 5 loaves and 2 fish. I once heard one preacher describe the boy's lunch as 5 brown and serve rolls and 2 sardines. I like that mental picture. I also like this story because it includes 3 elements or 3 principles that I have found to be very useful and beneficial in my life and in my ministry. The first of those principles is delegation. When the disciples expressed their concern about the hungry crowd and the lack of food resources, Jesus assigned them the duty of finding out what was on hand. Now, Jesus could have just spoken, or he could have just waved his arms, or he could have even just nodded. And abundant food would have been there for the eating. But instead, he chose to have his disciples share in the project. Delegation, getting others involved, is essential in Christian work. That's why we are always telling you we need your help. Jesus modeled delegation well when he was faced with a hungry crowd. Another principle that Jesus employed was that of organization. Now, once our Lord had the boy's lunch in his hands, in his possession, and once he had blessed it, he had the huge crowd break down and assemble in smaller, more manageable, more organized groups of 50 or 100 people each. Oh, this showed great wisdom on the part of Jesus. It also made the accomplishing of the task much more efficient and much more quickly completable. Like delegation, organization is also essential in Christian work. That's why we need leaders, that's why we need workers, and we need everybody staying on task. Jesus modeled the skill of organization. Now, personally, I like organization, and I consider myself a fairly well-organized person. But let me tell you a story right now as I digress for just a minute from Jesus' miracle to a story that happened to Dory and I. We were on vacation in Cancun in Mexico when, during our trip, a major hurricane came ashore. The resort we were staying at evacuated us and took us about 10 miles inland where it would be safer, and they led us to and put us in an old taxi depot building to ride out the storm in a much safer environment. Now, that part of the safety process was very organized and went smoothly, the transporting us from our resort to our shelter. But once we got there, and once the buses and vans let us all out, to be there the next 24 hours, things kind of unraveled. They put us in a room that was about the size of the Ogleville Church Sanctuary, and I would say there were probably between 600 and 700 there, people from the resort that had to be evacuated like us. Now, we had all brought a blanket and a pillow from the hotel, and we were all allowed one small piece of luggage to bring. But as we stepped off the bus, all organization went bye-bye. Everyone just piled into that big open room, and they began to stake out their area, their family area. There was no organization to it. No one led the charge. Now, in my humble opinion, there should have been aisles and walkways and open spaces between some areas, but that never happened. To further aggravate me and to make matters worse, while all the time there's no organization to this process, the entertainment team, that's the group of college kids the resort hires to entertain you while you're at the pool or other places. You know the people if you've been to those places. Well, the entertainment team, they never stopped entertaining us. They were always leading us as we prepared for the storm to come in group games and activities. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'd much rather be getting organized than playing games of Pictionary or Name That Tune or trivia of all kinds of varieties. We waited, and then the storm finally came ashore about 4 hours after we were relocated. We lost lights, we lost power, and there were only a few flashlights among the crowd. And this is an important part of the story, dealing with organization. I need to tell you that this was inland in Mexico. And in that part of Mexico, the plumbing was not designed and built to handle the flushing of toilet paper. That's not the custom in much of inland Mexico. Well, you know what happened. Most of the people in that room were Americans, and we were used to flushing our paper. No one bothered to tell us, you can't flush toilet paper here. And so you know what happened. It wasn't long after we got there and our hours began to drift by that the toilets became clogged, making a situation that was very unpleasant. You see, a few simple words of explanation and organization could have made a big difference if somebody had just spoken and said, do not flush the paper. But organization was absent. Oh yeah, the games went on and on and on, but soon the toilets did not. Well, later, as we began to lay down to our makeshift pallets for a night's rest as the storm was hitting its hardest, everyone spread out even more. And this made the area even more crowded and packed together without walkways. Well, during the night, I had to make one of those necessary trips. Yuck, I know. But I had to make one of those necessary trips and journey from my pallet or my mat to the restroom. Now, I was being as careful as I could in the very dark and crowded room, but somewhere along the way, I stepped on a sleeping young boy's arm. He awoke. He screamed in pain. Now, had there been organization and aisles and pathways, this little boy could have stayed asleep. He could have avoided the pain of a large man stepping on his arm, and I could have avoided the worry and the embarrassment that my misplaced foot found in the darkness on his arm. Well, the story ends joyfully the next morning as we were able to return to the resort and resume our vacation where the toilets were working and where everybody had enough space. I never heard any more from the boy that I stepped on, nor from his parents, and I'm thankful for that. And we survived without any more major incidents. But I tell you this story, and I tell it often to express my strong opinion that a little organization goes a long way, and it would have made things better for one and all. It certainly did as Jesus fed the crowd. A third principle or truth that this story contains is the idea of generational ministry. And by that I mean including all ages in kingdom and kingdom work. You see, Jesus never hesitated to include a wide variety of people in his plans and work. He included folks of all ages, folks of all levels of experience and maturity. And that's true also as he fed this large crowd in this remote area. Well, likewise, ministry is best done in multi-generational settings where the young and the old serve together as they can, each presenting their own unique talents and gifts that God has given them to use for his blessing and his purposes and his honor. Now, I really hope you'll keep these three vital principles for life and ministry in mind. Repeating, those are delegation, organization, and inclusivism. Multi-generational, all ages, all kinds of people doing God's work. But now let's return to the story of the feeding of the crowd. And when we do, we understand that Jesus is the main character of the story. It was he who took the boy's lunch, and with the power of God at work in him, made it possible for the entire crowd of over 5,000 people to eat until they were full and satisfied, and then, again, keeping those three principles at work. The disciples were able to collect 12 basketfuls of leftovers. It all started with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Now, please don't listen or give any kind of an ear to anybody who might try to lessen the miraculous side of this event. This was not just a feel-good thing where the people saw the little boy's generosity and it melted their heart, it warmed their heart, and they went away feeling good because of that. This was a miracle. And Jesus fed the crowd until they were full and there were leftovers. Now, we also need to keep in mind that this is just one of the times when Jesus miraculously fed a large crowd. We look at Matthew chapter 15 and Mark chapter 18, and we see him doing a very similar thing for a crowd of over 4,000 people. And as we read and reread this story, and as you ponder the questions I prepared following the story for your continued study, looking at all 4 accounts, you can learn all the details of this amazing day in the life of Jesus. And as you do, I hope you'll learn things, and as Paul Harvey always said, you'll enjoy the rest of the story. Now, as we close, I want to focus my attention now maybe on the other hero of the story, the little boy. And to do so, we're going to do a little fun exercise together. The miracle begins as the disciples brought the little boy's lunch to Jesus. And they say, "Here, we found a boy, and he has a small lunch. Here he is, Jesus." Well, let's use our imagination for just a minute. Put ourselves maybe in the little boy's situation and in his shoes. And think about some of the possible responses the boy might have offered when he was encountered about his lunch. And maybe even think about, would we say or think or do similar things as this little boy could have done or might have done? Let me just name some of the things the boy might have said or thought as the disciples grabbed him with his lunch and took him to Jesus. Now, this is what the boy could have said or done. He could have said, "I'm just a kid. You adults should solve this problem." Or he could have said, "My little bit can't make much difference. It won't make much difference. I'm just going to hold on to it for myself." Or maybe he could have tried to shift the blame a little bit and say, "Honestly, Mom didn't do her best work in the kitchen today. I'm not sure if this is worth or worthy of sharing." Maybe he could have thought very selfishly and said or thought something like, "This little bit of lunch Mom packed for me, it's mine. I'm hungry. I need to eat. I'm going to keep it." expanding a little bit about what he might or could have said. Perhaps he might have said something like, well, these people won't like what I brought. Why should I share it? Or he might have thought, this was Mommy's gift to me, Mommy's lunch for me to enjoy. She wouldn't want me giving it to others. Maybe he even thought on a little deeper level and he said something like, sharing is just not my gift or my calling. Maybe he thought, Jesus and his followers, they should have thought this through a little more carefully. They brought us out here, and now we're hungry, and what are they going to do? They should have thought this through a little more. Again, kind of passing the blame. Maybe he thought something like, if I give my lunch away, I won't get my basket back or my sack or whatever he carried it in. Maybe I won't get that back. And I use that a lot. Well, again, just a little fun to think about what he could have said or what he might have said. But I'm glad, as I know you are, those were not his answers. But we need to think. Do we ever answer Jesus in such ways when he asks us, like he did the little boy, to share his resources, his time, his talent, his treasures? Do we ever say similar kinds of things to Jesus and miss the point that Jesus wants us to offer whatever we have to him and his work in this world? Well, we thought about what the little boy could have said and done, but it's important that we focus now on what he did. And of course, we know that he willingly gave his lunch. We know that he trusted that something good would come about because Jesus was there and he could do great things with even just the little he had. The little boy was among the crowd that was able to eat. And you've just got to know that as he ate, he was probably kind of proud and happy that he'd been so generous. And he was probably able to eat his lunch in peace. Now imagine that you're one little boy and there's 4,999 other people who don't have anything to eat, and he's eating his lunch. That wouldn't have been a peaceful lunch. That wouldn't have been an enjoyable lunch. Everybody had been looking at him with mean looks and stares and leers of all kinds. But because he gave it, he was able to eat and enjoy his lunch with the other members of the crowd. Of course, what the little boy did was contribute so that Jesus could feed many, many others. There's a great lesson there for us. When we contribute time, talent, and treasures, Jesus takes those and multiplies them like he did the fish and the loaves and feeds others both physically and spiritually. The boy was able to witness this great miracle. I kind of assume that had he declined, had he refused to share his lunch, he would have either gone off and hidden or gone back home in shame or in frustration or whatever it may have been. And so he was able to witness this great miracle because he stayed there and offered his lunch to Jesus. That's what the little boy did, and I'm so thankful he did. Let me conclude again by saying you'll have an opportunity after I'm finished to look at a series of questions that delve more detailed into the text from all four Gospels. Please take some moment to consider those and think through some answers. But let me leave you with this conclusion and this application from this story. You see, Jesus is not nearly as concerned with the amount of what we have. Rather, he is far more concerned about what we do with whatever amount we have. Did you hear me? It's true. Jesus, to say it another way, is always more concerned about our availability than he is our ability. To say it one more way, he's much more concerned about our heart and our feelings toward money and things than he is the amount of those things we have. This is a great story. A great miracle occurred. Many people fed so they could continue to listen to Jesus teach and love the people as only he could. God bless you. I hope you're enjoying these studies, and I pray you'll continue to tune in and watch us each week. God bless you.